So I wanted to share just some thoughts about Independence Day and what I remember as a kid, and maybe what do you remember about Independence Day, or you still really enjoy about it? So starting out, I remember as a kid, I was raised up in the Bay Area in a city called Burlingame. It's kind of near the San Francisco airport. And I remember back in the day, we actually, we would get fireworks from the Red Devil fireworks stand. And they had a number of these like in our city. There were like two or three of them that were in some shopping areas. And it was like a pop-up stand. And they would sell fireworks. And I remember as a kid, we get on our bicycle and we would just go look at the fireworks. We had no money. We were like, oh, that looks cool. That looks cool. I wish we should get that one, or tell my mom or dad to get that one. And then, of course, we ended up bringing them out, and we'd open up the kit. And, as a little kid, we couldn't touch it. We were sitting in a chair in the back watching. And I remember my family and other neighbors would light the fireworks in the middle of the street. And we had folding chairs either on our sidewalks or in some cases on the edge of the street. And we all enjoyed it together on our city block. And they were like these cones that would, they'd probably shoot 2 or 3 feet in the air with some sparkles and ooh, ah, and that sort of thing. And that was what I knew of the holidays, of Independence Day. And I remember getting a little older, and I had cousins that had a cabin along the Russian River near Guerneville. And I remember going there as a kid, and I think they had fireworks celebrations that might have been in the city that were shot into the sky. And that was a big deal because I had never really seen that. Because for me, fireworks were like really low altitude. They were like, no taller than a 5 or 6 foot man. They were real small, low to the ground. Then I remember as a kid going to Utah, to Kearns, Utah, and spending a summer out there with my stepfather's parents. And Utah didn't allow fireworks, which I thought was amazing. And this is back in the 70s. And back then, they didn't have fireworks because they were afraid of fires. But what they did allow were sparklers and caps. Remember caps? That we would put them in the cap gun. It was like this red strip that had little circles with a bit of gunpowder on there. I assume it was gunpowder. And remember, we used to use a cap gun and we would shoot them. And then we would be able to tear those cap strips into individuals. And we had these things that looked like bombs that we could put a cap strip in, and we'd throw it in the air and it would land on its head. And then it would let out a big bang. And sometimes we put 2 or 3 slivers of paper, each with its own gunpowder, to make the bomb bigger. I remember as we got older and more brave, we would take the whole roll from the caps and then put it on the ground and then take a hammer and hit it just to create a big boom. And just some of the stupid, foolish things we did as kids. But it was interesting to me that in Salt Lake City, in Kearns, which was a suburb of Salt Lake, the whole state, you couldn't do fireworks. And then I remember getting closer to a teenager. Maybe I'm 11 or 12, and you start to see other kids in the neighborhood and they have firecrackers. And you're like, ooh, where'd you get those firecrackers? And then they would get bottle rockets or M80s. And you'd find out that there's this whole underground economy of people buying and selling illegal fireworks. And I was just amazed by it. I was like, you can't go to the Red Devil stand that's, the little pop-up place that's on the street corner that's selling fireworks. You had to, you got these things. And I was like, where are they getting them from? And people were saying, oh yeah, I know a guy who knows a guy. And, it was like, you would buy them from people and you find out ways to get them. And some people had connections and other people didn't. And it sounded scary because it was all illegal and all black market. But it was nuts. Then I remember being 12 years old, and that was 1776. No, wait. I was 11 years old in 1776. Remember that? That was the bicentennial. That was a big deal in America. That was our 200-year anniversary. So July 4th on the bicentennial was a big thing. You remember we had those bicentennial quarters? And there was a lot of other kind of happy birthday America stuff throughout 1976. And that was pretty cool, especially on the 4th of July. Then I'm a little older, and I'm 16. And then this is when I found out, like, oh, I'm going to try to buy some of these illegal fireworks. And so I lived in Burlingame, which is about like 20 miles or so south of San Francisco. And everyone said, oh, yeah, got to go to Chinatown. And that's where you can buy the fireworks. And I was thinking to myself, okay. And so I went with one of my friends and we went up there. I just kind of wanted to see what this is about and maybe try to buy some. And it was funny. It was, you're walking around in Chinatown in San Francisco. And first of all, Chinatown in San Francisco is amazing. I mean, it's legit. I mean, it's like people from the old country that are there, and the shops are very ethnic. They're like the food stores, the clothing stores are all traditional Chinese goods that are being sold, and you would see like chickens like hanging, things that you would normally never see at an American grocery store. You'd see things in the Chinese grocery stores that were different. So for me as a 12-year-old, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And so I'm walking around in Chinatown, and of course, I'm like 16 year old kid, and I stand out like a sore thumb. I mean, I'm like this white kid from the suburbs walking around, kind of looking lost, looking confused in Chinatown. And sure enough, I get hit up by lots of different people. And they come up to me and they say, firecracker, firecracker, and it was almost like when you're in Las Vegas and you're walking on the street and people are trying to give you those cards for the girls to call, that sort of thing. It was like you were just getting hammered by people all asking, you want firecracker? You want fireworks? And finally I said yeah to one of them. And they brought me into this back alley and they say, what do you want? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, what can I get? And he says, well, about this or that. And I said, okay, I'll have 2 of these, 3 of those, and 1 of those, whatever. It was kind of a small order. And I gave him the money and he left. So here I am. I'm in San Francisco with my buddy. I don't know anyone. I just gave my money to some guy I don't know in a back alley and he just disappeared. I mean, who knows? I mean, did I get ripped off? Is he going to come back? I don't know. And I know what I'm doing is illegal. And then sure enough, he shows up with a grocery bag full of stuff. And it was awesome. And everything he promised, he delivered on. And he made money and I got fireworks and we were happy. It was a trade. It was win-win. And granted, I didn't go buy the crazy stuff. Like I didn't buy M80s. I was just mostly interested in the firecrackers. I like the bottle rockets. Remember those where you'd be able to put them in a 7-Up bottle and shoot them up into the air? And then there was other ones, they called them jumping jacks. And they were like firecrackers, but they would spin and fly. And those could be a bit, you had to make sure you were real careful on where you lit those, because those could get away from you and cause some problems. But that's what we got. And I remember coming back and I was like, everyone's like, oh my God, where did you get that? And told him the whole story. And I never went back and did it again. It was something. And then, by the way, then I came down to college, came down here to UCSD, and people in San Diego have been doing the same thing, but rather than going to Chinatown, they go to Tijuana and they're ended up buying basically the same stuff. So it's just funny how in every community there is access to a lot of these black markets. Then I remember being here at UCSD and going to La Jolla Cove to watch the fireworks. And this was interesting because, my friends were all from Southern California because they were students with me in college, some from San Diego. And they say, oh yeah, we're going to go and watch the fireworks. And it was a big thing that everyone would go to a spot and watch fireworks. And I thought to myself, well, when I was growing up, we just had lawn chairs and we were just lighting up these Red Devil fireworks in our street. I've never thought of this as a big event where everyone goes and it becomes a big deal. And sure enough, that's what it was, and everyone's standing around going, ooh and ah. And it was the La Jolla Cove thing. And that was like, okay, this is different in Southern California than how I was raised. And then I remember probably the summer after my sophomore year in college, I was living in Pacific Beach. And then someone turned me on to the idea of Kate Sessions Park. Have you ever been up there? Kate Sessions Park is like on the side of Mount Soledad. And from there, you can get a view of the fireworks at the Pacific Beach Pier, the Ocean Beach Pier, from SeaWorld. I think from Old Town, you could see it. And maybe from Qualcomm Stadium. And all these fireworks shows were synchronized to the same music track that was being played on Kixie, KYXY. And I thought, oh, this is really cool. And by the way, Kate Sessions Park was a really neat park. I had been up there before for some event, some activity. And it's like this park that's like on the slope of the Mount Soledad. And so it's a natural amphitheater to watch the fireworks. And this was really a neat thing. And so that became my go-to place for fireworks for a while. Um, then then I'm a parent and I have my kids, and my kids played sports, and so we would go um, to baseball tournaments or softball tournaments, or we go to Padre games, and there was always fireworks or something like that going on, depending on the event and where we were. But again, fireworks were not something it was amateurs were doing. They were always done by professionals. They were always done, safely. They were always mindful of not starting fires because they didn't want a bunch of Yahoo individual people using them. And I just kind of got used to that as the thing. And so, I had no desire to go back and get any of the illegal fireworks or anything like that anymore, especially with the fire danger in Southern California. But it just was very different than when I was a kid. Then I live in Poway, and we moved to Poway in 96. And then in '07, we moved into our current home in Poway. And from our backyard, we can see, we're on the north side of the big Twin Peaks hill. And so from our backyard, we can sort of see over the top of the Twin Peaks hill in the direction of Rancho Bernardo High School. And when we moved here in '07, the fireworks from the Rancho Bernardo High, we could see clear as a bell because they would shoot up high enough where they went over the top of the hill. And we were able to get a really nice fireworks show from our backyard. And so I would bring my radio out there and we would play Kixie FM and we would watch the fireworks. And that was a big deal for a few years. But then, because of safety reasons, legit reasons, they started lowering the height of the fireworks at Rancho Bernardo High School till it got to the point where I couldn't see them at all. Now I'm lucky if I see a couple of glimmers of light that shoot up high enough over the hill. Usually I'm just getting the ambient light from when they explode and pop. And I still get a little bit of the ambient light from Poway High, but that's much further away. And so it's really, you can't really see those at all. But it changed. It's funny how it always changed, our perception of it. Then get this was incredible. Then this was like maybe around, I don't know, 2014-ish. Our family went, hooked up with another family friends of ours, and we got a houseboat in Flaming Gorge, Wyoming. Actually, Flaming Gorge is this reservoir that's on the border. The reservoir spans the border of Wyoming and Utah. And some friends of mine had gone there on a fishing trip a long time ago, and they raved about it and said it was so awesome. And we kind of had a hankering to do a houseboat trip. And so we went there. And we piled the kids in the Honda Odyssey, and we drove from San Diego all the way up there. And our friends in Northern California did the same. And we met out there. But what was amazing is that once we crossed the Utah border into Wyoming, like almost immediately, we started seeing signs for fireworks. And there were stores that were jam-packed of nothing but fireworks in Wyoming. And it was like I was going back to my days going into Chinatown, but rather than doing a deal in a back alley, I was doing my deal in a legitimate retail store that had shelves and shelves and shelves of every possible firework you could ever imagine. And I couldn't believe it. And I was trying to tell my kids, this is incredible. And I don't know if they really understood it, within the context of everything I grew up as a kid. But it was mind-blowing to see that. And we ended up buying some fireworks there. So then we were on Flaming Gorge. I ended up shooting some of them, and we had some fun with them, and it was done safely. But that was something. And then we had some leftover fireworks that we didn't use, and I just had packed them in a bag and brought them back. And then I was here in Poway, and I had some fireworks. I didn't know what to do with them. I was like, well, what do I do? I don't want to give them away because then someone's going to probably use them and cause a problem. I certainly don't want to light them anywhere near my home. So I ended up every once in a while, I have to go into the Poway Business Park where there is a hazardous waste place where I go drop off old cans of paint and that sort of thing. I remember I brought them there. And I remember I gave them to one of the employees. I think they're all City of Poway employees. And I said, "Hey, I've also got these fireworks and you guys take them." And I remember their eyes lit up. So I'm pretty sure that somebody enjoyed those fireworks. They weren't just disposed of in a safe and sane method.